for the United Methodist Church. And if this had been any ordinary year, and frankly, friends, we know this is no ordinary year. McGray and Justin and Vicki and I would have been in Stewart Auditorium, just the other side of the chapel, electing bishops for our church. I'm Clarke Campbell-Evans. I'm lifetime partner of Sally, and I'm the director of missional engagement for the United Methodist Church, and it's my joy to join you this morning. Normally on Thursday mornings, this is Vicki Walker's spot, but her dad's not doing too well. His health is poor, and she's over in Kentucky. Vicki, we are praying for you this morning. I wanted to share with all of you about something that the conference has started in response to COVID-19. To get into this, I wanted to start with a story you know well, about a kid who fed a crowd. Now, we don't know it by that name. We know it by another, but it comes straight out of the Bible. And in fact, a version of it is found in every one of the Gospels. There was Jesus and his disciples on a lake shore. This was before the time of social distancing, and we know that because John tells us there were more than 5,000 people gathered there, and none of them were wearing masks. Now, that might be ministerial overestimation. It's been known to happen. In fact, when preachers start adding about how many people are present, they get to over 100, and the next thing you know, they start computing geometrically. There were a lot of people there. There had been a lot of teaching, a lot of healing, but despite the winsome stories of the teacher and the miracles of the moment, you could hear the rumble of stomachs growling, echoing across the gathering. Jesus heard it, and he knew that people needed to be fed. And for those of you who might want to make the Gospel of John the, quote, spiritual gospel, would do well to remember this moment on the lake shore. Christians, you see, are concerned with bodies of people as well as their souls. Hunger and nakedness and poverty and lack of shelter are just as important as the songs that are sung, the prayers that are prayed, the sermons that are preached. And in a day like this is the virtual holy kisses that are being shared in the chat box. I hope to God we never forget it. As Jesus was trying to orchestrate some way to feed the crowd, the disciple Andrew shows up with a lad who had 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Now, barley bread was coarse bread, crumbly bread, the bread of the poor. And those 2 fish were probably sardine-sized fish that had been caught in the lake and pickled so they wouldn't spoil. This was no bottomless bucket from Kentucky Fried Chicken. This was no Publix deli platter. This was a poor kid's lunch. Can't you imagine the disciples howling with laughter over the ludicrous nature of it? 5,000 to feed and only 1 sack lunch to do the job? 5,000 growling stomachs and only 1 brown bag to satiate the hunger? But the kid, he offers it freely. Use my lunch, maybe it'll help, he says. Why is that the less people have, the more willing they are to share? Well, you know the story of the miracle of the multiplication, which leads, frankly, to me to share with you this initiative of Bishop Carter. He is leading it in response to COVID-19. It is called Fill the Table, with the aim of engaging 100,000 United Methodists in Florida to serve 3 million meals over 15 months. Vicki Walker was asked by the bishop to serve on this task force because of her lifelong commitment to missions and justice. Right now is a critical time for the most vulnerable in Florida. The gross domestic product has just had the worst quarter ever since we even started counting it. It has declined by 34%, and it will hit some people, the poorest of the people, the hardest. The United Methodist ministry across 640 churches in Florida is responding to this year's growling stomachs that are echoing through our state. And while there is a mercy component to put Florida food in Florida bellies, there's also a justice component to this food, to look at food insecurity and its sources. Will Congress finally get around to passing the extension of food stamps, something they've been arguing about for a couple of years? Bread for the World has campaigns related to that issue and others to benefit hungry people. And how might we join in those efforts to end hunger in our state? Let me end with a story. I moved to a new appointment as the Miami urban minister in the summer of 1988. Within days of arriving, Martha Gardner called me to invite me to stop by her church to see the ministry she had with children. We're in the Triangle, she said. I had no idea where the Triangle was, but I found her church on a map. The address was Opelika, a small town in the metropolitan area of Miami, and sure enough, it was in a triangle. And I drove there. When I arrived, I was trying to find my way in, and every street I came to was blocked, every one of them. Finally, I drove around 3 sides, finally found the entrance, and as I tried to get in, I had to drive very slowly through these barricades. As I entered the neighborhood, I was almost to the end of the very first block when a young man stepped off the corner and into the street in front of me. I had to hit the brakes to keep from hitting him. And he came over to my side of the car, and I rolled down the window, and he leaned in, but he didn't say a word. All he did was sniff. I did the math quickly in my head and realized, no, I said, I'm not here for that. I'm here to find a church, Mount Pleasant. Have you heard of it? Do you know where it is? He still didn't say a word, but he kind of cocked his head in the direction up the road, and I drove on. And there I found a small church, and thank God there was a parking space in the shade there. As I'm getting out of my car, an older teen is running pell-mell down the road in the middle of the street with a man with a rifle running after him. But that youth jumps a fence and disappears between the houses. Now, I didn't know what the Triangle meant, but later that week I discovered that this neighborhood has the record for the highest per capita death by gunshot wound of any neighborhood in Miami. And that neighborhood is renowned. If you want to buy smack or coke or ganja, that was the right place to go. And in my 5-minute introduction to this neighborhood, I already had anecdotal evidence about some of the factors shaping this particular community. As I turned up the block to go to the church, I noticed every window and every door had bars on it. Well, yeah, I thought, I get why that is. And as I knocked on the door, I heard 3 locks being unlocked, and the door opened wide, and there was Martha with a big smile, and thank goodness, I could hear the air conditioning blowing cold air into that building, and I welcomed the chance to get out of the heat. The room was brightly lit and freshly painted. There was a kitchen off to the side, and Martha introduced me to volunteers and then to a circle of children sitting on the floor, all of them with a paper bagged lunch with their name on it right in front of them. Martha handed me my bag with my name on it, and we sat down. And after we had lunch, the kids wanted to show me the artwork on the walls, and they wanted to sing songs for me and tell me what they were learning. And then, in that moment, as I was getting ready to leave, I realized something really important. Those kids were also leaving, and they each picked up a bag to take home with enough sandwiches for 4 more people. Martha, you see, had coordinated this ministry, smack dab in the middle of one of the dangerous neighborhoods in Miami. There's a little outpost of the kingdom. Right there we have an example of the witness of the church demonstrating Christ's love for all people. You talk about making God's love real. Martha and her team came with her version of barley loaves and fish and a vision. United Methodists, you know, we've got a lot to learn from people like Martha. How did you do it? Did you get a grant? Did you have a donor with deep pockets? How did you make this happen? She said, nope, none of that. Turns out there are just 4 churches in the neighborhood, and they each collect money for us. None of them were well-to-do churches. All of them were working-class congregations. I would later serve one of them in Fulford in North Miami Beach. Each of them took a red tin pail, and some put it in the narthex, some put it up on the altar rail, some put it in the center of of the center aisle in the back of the church. Just a few weeks later, I'm at Norland, and there at Norland United Methodist, the prelude was playing, and as I was sitting there, I could hear the cacophony, the percussion of coins as people walked by and were throwing in their nickels and dimes and quarters. Here we have a Miami miracle to feed hungry children. And as the initiative gets off the ground, I pray for a groundswell of Martha Gardners to rise up across the churches of Florida and help all of us put feet to our faith. In this moment of a health crisis, we might find bold courage to offer ourselves. Now, Hyde Park knows about this kind of ministry. One of your members, Dorothy Leaving, made sandwiches she would bring to church on Sunday mornings to hand out to hungry people hanging around the church. Open Arms, frankly, rose up out of that idea, and to this day continues to feed hundreds of homeless people. Right now, doing it out of the parking lot on Sunday mornings where people can socially distance but still get the food they need. If you'd like to be a part of this and make a donation to the Bishop's initiative, please mark your gift with that notation. Every penny you give, 100%, will go to feed hungry people. Don't you know that little lad was just delighted of the use that was made of his lunch? Can't you imagine him getting home that night? Mom, you should have seen what Jesus and I did today. Can't you hear the satisfaction in his voice? Friends, the happiest people I know, the most fulfilled people, are those who have immersed themselves in some undertaking that is bigger than they are, which has a purpose that is noble and uplifting, and to which they know they are making a significant contribution. You don't measure the satisfaction by the size of the contribution. You measure it by the size of commitment. Will you pray with me, friends? Oh God, take our gifts that we offer freely. Take our commitments that we offer boldly and multiply them as the outpouring of your love all around. In Jesus' name, amen.